The suspense is killing me.
Hello and welcome to the Dash News podcast. This is episode 115. I am Mark Mason and I'm joined by my fellow co-host and amigo, Joel Valenzuela. How's it going, Joel?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. I'm loving watching the YouTube actually start working now. So for those in attendance around the world, YouTube decided to pull a big naughty on us, and it got rid of the one thing we use for all our podcasts and all our live interview videos. And after much weeping and gnashing of teeth, we decided to move on and find a new new setup. And so we have a new setup that works for this. So apologies for any bumps along the road as we figure out how to do this new and improved, or more importantly, still workable service. So thanks to Mark for figuring it all out. I've just been in the background cracking the useless little feather whip, and there you go.
But we still have the live chat. So any feedback that you can give us in the live chat, or if there's anything that's going wrong,
bans.
Yeah, please put that in. I think because now that we're broadcasting via a different method, there may be a little bit of audio sync issues with the sound and my mouth moving. But if you're listening to this via iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, or elsewhere, don't worry. Don't sweat the technique. All is good. So anyway, technical issues aside, we actually have a very special guest on the podcast this week, Alex from Dashwatch. Welcome to the podcast, Alex.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Excellent. Well, this is actually a very special occasion because if you are a Dash community member and you are a member of the Discord, you've probably seen Alex around. He goes by the username Dash DAO. But in terms of Dashwatch, most people can't put a face to the name. So this is really the first time they're actually getting to see you. But for those that are listening and perhaps new to Dash, what is Dashwatch? Could you just summarize that for us?
Sure. Yeah. So Dashwatch is a proposal where a treasury funded proposal. So really our scope is really kind of stay on top proposals, reporting on what proposal owners are doing, what they originally intended to do from the proposal, and how are they measuring up to those objectives and milestones they want to do. I think one of the benefits that we have is that we are a neutral third party, and we kind of help validate some of the statements and milestones that the proposal owner is making. So very high level, we are kind of almost like proposal reporters for the network.
Yeah. So Dashwatch has been around for some time now, and are you an original team member? Was you there from the inception, or did you come along later?
Yeah. So originally, a user named Paragon. So he started this in late, I believe, 2018, 2017, almost probably mid to late 2017, early 2018. He started the first Dashwatch proposal. And originally, it was him, a guy named Gethin, and then a guy named Peyton. Then I joined on shortly afterwards with another guy named Matt. So right now, we've been working for Dash for about over a year and a half now. So it's been a while that we worked for Dash. But really, the kind of the core team has always remained the same. Of me, Paragon, Gethin, Matt, and Peyton has really been the kind of core team. We've had a little bit of some people, will step down or take a step back when the proposal system is a little strained, right? But that's kind of the core team. We've been around for almost 2 years now, so.
Yeah, and I'm sure we're going to talk about some proposals and everything in general. But Dash is really unique in this sense because we really had the first DAO, right? We were the first cryptocurrency DAO, but in terms of decentralized governance and funding, this has kind of been a learning process along the way. And, there have been mistakes, but, we're optimizing it. Do you feel from where you first got involved yourself to where we are today, do you feel proposals that are being submitted to the network are more professional? Do you think the structure's better?
Sure. So kind of just to give you some context, some frame up. So like our current proposal system is normally we pay people first and then they do the work, right? Rather than they do the work and then we pay them. So because of that model, we pay them in the hopes that they do what they say they're going to do, right? So that's kind of where Dashwatch comes in and says, hey, how you been doing what you think or what the treasury thinks you should be doing, right? So to answer your question in terms of do we feel like proposal owners are being more professional, I think we are moving towards more proposal owners realizing and understanding that when you have a proposal, you have to have metrics and KPIs to back up what you've done. Right? We're seeing more people with pictures, seeing more people work with websites that have data. For example, people working with AnyPay, we can get their wallet transaction data, right? So I think in terms of professionalism, we are seeing a slow step towards there because we are seeing proposal owners starting to take into account like, hey, I need to show metrics and impact of my proposal, right? I think before in the past, it was just, hey, how are we doing? What have you done? X, Y, Z, and that's really been it.
So in terms of like general health of the Dash network, because obviously there's a lot more proposals now where it feels like that with the Dash price where it is and the allocated budget available, it's very tight and it creates a very competitive environment. Now, competition in terms of the free market can be a very, very good thing, but it can also be very stressful and create pressure. Do you think the network and community itself has changed in the last few years since this treasury cycle? Because now a lot of the focus is on the proposals and what's being funded because they need something to look forward to in the future. Whereas beforehand, Dash was known as the open, welcoming, friendly community. And I still believe the community is our greatest asset. But in terms of how we work and function as a community, so the perceptions kind of changed onto purely the projects, right? Which is very different from other cryptocurrency projects because we have different Dash funded organizations. So it's really hard to keep up with everything, right?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot to kind of unbundle there. I guess one of the first points I can make is really that as you get more proposals and as you get more proposals in the system, and as the budget becomes tighter, a lot of the MNOs need a way to compare, okay, what proposals should I support and which ones shouldn't I support, right? And even within the same categories of marketing or integration, you have to be able to compare them somehow, right? So I think that's one of the things that DashWatch has been trying to work on is, what are some metrics we can use to compare similar proposals or even different proposals? What can we use to measure the impact, right? Because really, you want a way that you can compare proposals on the same scale, right? Otherwise, it's really hard to choose. Otherwise, you're just basing off feeling. I feel like this is the right proposal, and really, we want to be basing our decisions on, reason, logic, metrics, results, impact, right? But I think what you're seeing now is more of that as we have more proposals and the budget gets tighter. You're going to see more people trying to say, okay, X versus Y. How can we compare them, right? In terms of keeping track of the proposals, I think one thing you mentioned is as proposals, the longer the treasury goes on, the more proposals we have come in, right? And we have proposals that we pay them once, but we expect kind of ongoing work, right? We want proposals where we can have lasting impact, right? So I think as the treasury system continues on, one of the impacts DashWatch can make is following up on these proposals that we funded, 3, 6, 12 months ago and see, hey, is your impact still being felt, in helping drive adoption, helping drive Dash, right? Because a lot of times when we fund a proposal, we want to kind of have a long-term investment, right? So to that point, that's kind of another benefit of DashWatch is trying to follow up on those older proposals and making sure that as we get more proposals through the system, we're able to keep track of them and see, hey, are they delivering the impact that we think they are, right?
Yeah, so from my personal perspective, I remember back in the day, it was like 80% of the treasury was the core team. I think it used to be 90%, but they talked them down to pledging just 80%. And that was still like criminally underpaid people back in the day. And then all of a sudden, and whatever was left was like, oh, I'm going to do a meetup. I'm going to do this. Or Amanda, I want to do videos. Like that was it. There was almost nothing going on. And then all of a sudden the price boomed. And where it is today is significantly boomed over the $7 when I was paying attention. And then all of a sudden you have a lot of like spray and what do they call it? Spray and pray or fund and forget about it. So there's a lot of those proposals just out there where people were just, and I remember our like ethics thing on Dash News, then called Dash Force News, was we're not going to talk about any proposals until they're funded, until that, because then it's like once it's actually funded, once it's actually like the contract is engaged, it's like a thing. And then over time, we realized we wrote about a lot of stuff once and never wrote about it again because, you know, you fund it and stuff happens. And then it's like, and so then eventually we stopped actually covering funded proposals. We waited for them to actually deliver a result to cover, to write about. And then I'm sure you've seen that kind of thing happen. So of the early generation proposals, like early boom generation, like 2017, have you kept track of like success rate on those or some kind of delivery rate? It doesn't have to be, was it worth it? But did they do what they set out to do?
Yeah, so that's one of the tricky things about Dash Watch is because, you know, we're trying to maintain a neutral stance and we're trying to be strictly objective, right? So from our point of view, how we define success, we don't really define if the proposal is successful or not, right? We define what they've done, what their status is, what their budget is, and then the idea is for the reader to decide have they been successful, right? Because you have a scenario where a proposal sets out to do 3, 4, 5 things, and to one person success is doing all 5, to another person success is doing 2, right? So really, like, we don't really track the success rate, but we do track, you know, what proposals have been abandoned, which ones have been completed, right? And even to that degree, like, you know, where we have kind of some exposure right now is that, you know, the proposal owner says it's completed and they haven't finished XYZ milestones, or they only finished 2 out of 3 milestones. Right now, we're saying, you know, it's completed. They say they completed it. It's really up to the reader to kind of dig into the report and say, hey, what had they actually completed, right? So we are working on right now a milestones tracker type deal, right? Where we say these are things they originally set out to do, and these are things that they actually did or did not do, right? What we are worried about and what we're not comfortable doing yet is putting a number to proposals, because there's so many different proposals right now. We just don't have a way right now for us to put a number and say this is success rate, this is the score, so to say, or the metric we give to the proposal. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So from a not necessarily a professional perspective, but just from a onlooker perspective, now that you actually, because you looked into these proposals and you kind of have paid attention, now as a voter, do you think that the network's getting a lot of those early proposals? Do you see a lot of returns on that, of them like completing what they wanted to?
Yeah. So it's kind of a hard question too, because back then we didn't really have that much. Like we didn't have much built out as we do now, right? We don't have a lot of the verification process in place back then. We didn't have a lot of the tracking for the website, for the wallets, all that stuff. We didn't have tracking for, you know. So it's really hard to say what that impact is from those early proposals, because we didn't have those things in place. And that's why now we want to set those things in place so that we have that long-term tracking, right? So 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line, we can reflect back on 2018, 2019 proposals and say, how are they doing now, right? But because we didn't have those things set up in 2017, early 2018, and even late 2018, it's really hard to measure now. But I would say, you know, most of those proposals, the bulk of those proposals, are either no longer active, or, you know, we follow up and they're done. They're not really. Some of them aren't even involved in Dash anymore, right? So that's another thing I think sometimes them knows you think about is, you know, what is the long-term impact of this proposal? Like, can it keep going without Dash funding, right? And I think that's another discussion the community's been having is like, when we have self-sustaining proposals, right?
Yeah, or self-sustaining projects at least. That's the thing with the proposal system, is it was used to fund development. And then I can't remember for sure, but I think Amanda in the video series was the first like non-core kind of employee of the DAO system. And then over that, it was like a lot of one-off grants and projects. And then, like, for example, we have groups like Dash Force for the longest time, and then Dash Embassy, and a few other projects that are kind of other employees of Dash long term, including Dashwatch, of course. But for a lot of time, it has been a lot of like one-off grants, and a lot of people, unfortunately, there's been a lot of projects that have been one-off grants into perpetuity. Like, hey, invest in our company. Like, like we should give us all this stuff, gift us Dash, give us a bunch of stuff that then you can, and then we need more. It's like, well, when are the grants going to run out? And then you just run your business, for example.
Yeah. Can I throw Alex? Are you still there? Or are you
Yeah,
okay? Right. So I thought I lost your connection there for a second. Okay, good. Can I throw you a kind of curveball question? Like just something just popped into my head. So we are a self-funding, self-governing DAO, right? And traditionally, as you were saying before, proposals are grant-based, right? People say we're going to do this work, and then we pay them upfront to do that work, and the majority of the time it's worked out pretty good, although there have been some cases where we've had to learn from our mistakes and try and improve on that model. However, recently there is now a Dash Investment Foundation. Ooh. So in terms of proposals that you would do reports on to help hold them accountable to the network and make sure they deliver on what they said they were going to do, I'm curious, because how is Dashwatch going to react to, say, Dash Investment Foundation proposals moving forward? For example, if a proposal went in next month that said, hi, I'm from XYZ business, I want this much from the treasury, and I'll give this much equity to the Dash Investment Foundation, do you still see that as a proposal that you need to hold to account and report on, or do you treat that separately?
Yep, that's a good question. So I think for the DIF guys, right, the DIF team, I think Dashwatch can also bring a lot of value to them, because I think one of the valuable things the Dashwatch team has is just experience with proposals, as well as looking at is their budget going to meet what they want to do, right? Are they meeting milestones? We've seen plenty of proposals that fail, plenty of proposals that under budget, over budget. So we have that experience, especially like the wide scope experience with all these proposals, that we can kind of help work with the investment foundation to kind of help guide them, say, hey, this is what we've seen in the past. Let us kind of help you measure these proposals, right? Because on one hand, the treasury, if they're already paying us to do the work, we shouldn't have to ask the foundation investors to do additional work on top of that, right? Because they're also getting paid. So I think the best way to really have that mutual benefit is that we can kind of pair with them and help them kind of follow up on these reports. Because at the end of the day, we are investing in a proposal or a project or a company. It's just the same as we put treasury funds into it, right? Because essentially that's what we're doing. We're giving the treasury funds to DIF Foundation, and they are kind of going out and spending the money, investing. I think the network would be very interested in what are the results of that, and present the same format that they're used to, because maybe the investment foundation, maybe they don't have the background in doing some of the reporting, some of the metrics, something like that. So I think it would be a good kind of pairing for us, right? And we're always trying to find new ways where we can add more value to the proposal, right? To our proposal.
Yeah, also, I'm pretty sure that there might be some kind of hybrid systems where, like before the grant system, you just say, oh, we're going to do all this stuff for you, and then we want money. And you do that, and you try to track the stuff that's been done. Now, with the Dash Investment Foundation, it's like our business is going to be great. Give us money, and you get a piece of our success. You get equity. Now, sometimes, how many projects might be have all kinds of different ideas and just think they're going to succeed or whatever, and like promising equity, which for a chance at trying possibly not risky business might not be enough. So there might be some cases where it's like, hey, we're a small like payment startup. We want to like do all this kind of stuff. We're a point of sale solution for merchants, and we're going to use Dash for it. And we want to give equity in exchange for stuff for startup funding. It might be a situation where it's like, yeah, we want equity and we want Dash as the preferred currency on the platform. And so now when you have those two, now it's not just done. Now it's like we have to follow up and make sure that they're they're actually doing that part of the deal, and not just did they legally transfer some equity.
Sure. Yeah. And that's part of it too, just following up and making sure that the original milestones and promises are being kept up with, right? It's a lot easier if someone said, "Oh yeah, I did that." It's a lot harder to kind of prove it and show the proof for that, right? At the end of the day, we just want to be sure that the money the Treasury is spending is we're getting our value from it, right?
What about
absolutely.
this? I was going to say, so because we're in uncharted territory right now, the Dash Investment Foundation is new, and there's actually different vehicles and methods they can get funding. So we've already spoke about one example where a business comes to the Treasury and asks for money in exchange for equity. But what about this event? So what happens if next month, for example, the Dash Investment Foundation actually comes to the Treasury and asks for money out the Treasury for them to invest how they see fit? Now, do the Dash Investment Foundation then have to report to you? Because in theory, they've taken money from the Treasury that's been voted on by the Masternode network to approve. So should the Dash Investment Foundation then have to report back to Dashwatch, because there has to be some level of accountability, right? I'm sure they'll be reporting by a Dash Investment Foundation, and I'm not implying any malicious intent. It's just this is a new system structure that is brand new. And have you thought about this yourself? Like how do you foresee things moving forward?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think ultimately, like, that's up to the MNO network, and like now at least we have a system with like the polling mechanism. I don't know if everyone's seen it yet, but on the Dashwatch site, we'll have like a new polling mechanism now that kind of help guide the Masternode directive, right? Because there's some of these questions, a lot of questions out there in this unknown territory where we are just trying to decide what do we want to do, what do we want to try, right? And in the day, it's the MNOs that do the funding, so they should decide, right? So that could easily be a question that we put in the poll, say, hey, MNOs, what do you want to do? Do you want to have, full reporting? Do you want limited reporting? Do you want no reporting? So we can definitely outline that. But I think end of the day, it's going to be up to MNOs what they feel like is the best way for the investment foundation to do the reporting. I mean, on one hand, you don't want to bog them down with too much administrative work, but at the same time, though, the network does want to know, hey, I want to know where this money is going, and what's the impact of it, right?
I've got a question for Joel, actually.
Oh no!
So prior to Dashwatch's existence, for those who don't know, Joel is the editor-in-chief at dashnews.org. And prior to Dashwatch's existence, we used to have a writer called Jerome Maraca, and he used to look at proposals and write reports. But how important, Joel, is it to have a independent body reviewing the proposals? Because you've got the news and the publication side, and it's probably, how important is it in terms of accountability to have an independent body outside of Dash Core Group just looking at this stuff and presenting it to the network?
I think it's extremely important, and it's one of those things where this is one of those areas where OGs in the crypto community kind of have a different perspective, and I hate to call a relative newbie like late 2016 with Dash, like myself, as an OG, but compared to a lot of stuff, like Dash Force was born out of a single demand, which was we're getting crushed on social media. Like people think Dash is a scam. They're not giving it the light of day. No one's here. Let's actually create a task force to, show up and actually answer questions, refute trolls, things like that. And then it turns into, hey, news. No one's covering us. Let's do news. And then no one is listing. There's no good merchant directory way to spend it. Let's make one of those. And then no, there's no good podcast and media. Let's go do that. And then, there's lagging PR. Let's go do that. There's just like so many things that we go. And one of those demands was, what's up with these proposals? So then we'd had a proposal reviewer who just kind of went around and wrote about stuff. And it was honestly a task that we took on out of popular demand. It's never one I really, wanted. And it's one of those things where I'm just like so glad someone else is doing it now, because it's a thankless job. And I'm sorry to say it, Alex, but it is kind of a thankless job chasing people down, being like, well, what did it do? And then they might dispute, well, I was misquoted. And I kind of like, and also um, having like the power of the press is a relatively high. It's like a high ask. It's like a high position. And so if you're the one controlling the media narrative, and then you're the one who's just keeping everyone in line, who's funded by the DAO, that's kind of like a lot on one single group, right? It's just like, yeah, we tell the whole world outside of Dash what's going on with Dash, and we tell all the inside people, we control like which proposals are doing well, which aren't. Like we control the narrative around that. I don't know. I was not really comfortable being like a single central point of failure, possibly. So it is good to have that off on something else. Now, I also like that, we've done investigative reports before that have gone into some proposals, and I don't really, that's kind of out of our scope right now, but I do like the ability to say there's a project or something that has relevance outside of the proposal system. So it's not just how's this proposal delivering, but no, if you're talking about like a newsworthy group, like let me just pick something at random, like say Dash Labs, right? All that stuff, Evan Duffield's, Dash's founder's like research organization that's been relatively quiet for a while. And like say there's some big thing that turns out that they're like researching, like they started being funded by the Monero community, or whatever. They're like funded, they're doing research for that or whatever, while they're saying it's for Dash, or compromised by the CIA or whatever you want to call it, a ridiculous story you want to come up with. Then you'd like report on that. Now, of course, that's not a proposal, but what about, say, adoption efforts in Thailand, in Colombia and Venezuela, wherever, if there's something newsworthy about that, like newsworthy beyond voters, beyond just to like the random Dash user who just wants to know how the project's going, that might be a reason to report on stuff like that. Now, that has nothing to do with proposal milestones, nothing to do with the proposal, just with the facts itself. Now, we've also had independent actors in the Dash community that aren't part of a proposal come up with their own research on stuff that impacts proposals. And sometimes it all gets a little messy, but when you have multiple groups kind of staying in their lanes, yet there's some crossover, I think it keeps everything in line and decentralized, which is obviously what you want. You don't want any group to have power, unlimited power, because then you run into some real problems.
So this is an important distinction to make, Alex. It's kind of why I thought it'd be best to go to Joel first, because Brian Taylor actually was the first person to go out on the record and stated that, we need a independent news body external to Dash Core Group to keep them accountable. Yeah. When it comes to our treasury,
he's the first one to phrase it like that. Evan's the first one to say, you should start a Dash newspaper. All right. But anyway.
But like in terms of the importance, because now, although Dash was the first masternode DAO network and self-governing, self-funding, there are other ones that have come down the line. But I do believe it is an important distinction to point out that Dashwatch isn't accountable to Dash Core Group. You're accountable to the masternode network. And that's not the same with all these new treasury system cryptocurrencies. So although Dash was really the first in terms of decentralization, Dashwatch is in its own field, because it's not like you can look to other projects, right? And what they're doing, you're kind of leading the way forward in this. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think part of it too is like, Dashwatch kind of helps bridge that gap between MNOs and proposals, right? Because you could have thousands, hundreds of MNOs all trying to talk to the same proposal, and they all want different things, right? They all want different metrics. They all have different questions. I think Dashwatch is a good way to kind of funnel that through one kind of team and one kind of messaging, right? And in addition, like you said, like there are projects that go through Dash Core Group, or there are projects that are more private in nature, and they're not comfortable sharing all the information with the decentralized group, because in their minds, who knows who could get that information and then go and use it, right?
Yeah, and that's very true too, because anyone who can acquire 1,000 units of Dash or a group of people is like now a master owner and therefore a stakeholder in the Dash network. And there's been let's forget bad actors who there may be some very deliberate ones in a network. Of course, you can't stop it. You just have to outnumber them. But they're just a bunch of crazies too sometimes. And so sometimes it's just not, it's not right to just have any old random person just haranguing proposal owners.
Yeah. So it just helps kind of create that funnel of information as well as just a way of communication, right? It's a clear channel of, hey, this is how you're going to present information. Here's also a channel where you can provide us, more sensitive information. We'll verify it and we'll communicate to the community without having to expose, your entire business, right?
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think are the kind of job qualifications for people who would want to participate, who would want to work in Dashwatch? Now, I'm not saying like you're hiring right now, but like what kind of skill sets? Because we're doing everything from scratch with crypto. It's just building from the ground up. This never existed before. This is all new. And so, like, for example, I've been a long time writer and then a short time, but journalist, crypto journalist. And so that qualifies me for a big part of my job. Now, what do you think are some key things that feed into this kind of thing? Like,
sure.
I'm sure business experience helps. I'm sure some kind of accounting experience helps. What kind of things do you see as like important for this sort of a job?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest characteristics that Dashwatch has tried to build upon is really just our foundation of being objective, right? Being trustworthy and also having the integrity, right? So one of the biggest challenges sometimes you'll see in crypto is you have a lot of very passionate and very charged and sometimes biased individuals, right? And when you come to a value proposal and in your mind you've already decided I like this or I don't like this, your report is not objective, it's not facts based, is now based on what you feel like is what it should be, the outcome should be, right? So I think one thing that I really liked with our team is that everyone has been very objective in their views, right? They're not swayed one way towards the other, right? And the good thing about that is now the readers can say, okay, this is a neutral report, this gives me its facts, and they're not coming to report knowing, hey, this is going to tell me one thing or another. It's they make the decision themselves, right? At the end of the day, as a voter, you want to make the decision yourselves, right? So I think one of the big characteristics is, I think probably with any job is really you want someone that you can trust and you want someone, especially in this position, that is objective, right? And I think beyond that, really since we've kind of grown our scope a little bit, we've kind of each taken our own kind of realm of responsibility, right? So for example, we have Matt doing a lot of the kind of the website work, and I've been helping him with a lot of the kind of data analysis. So my background is statistics, right? So for us, kind of building out some of the data structures and the databases, right? So honestly, too, with a position like Dashwatch, I think a lot of the experience is made on the job, right? Because this is, like Mark said, a kind of uncharted territory, right? A lot of it you learn as you go along, right? And first people that start doing crypto, previous experience, what we previous experience you in crypto, right? You kind of build upon it. I think that's one of the tough things about trying to fill a position in Dashwatch is you have to find someone who has that experience in DAOs, right? And how many are really out there? You know what I mean? So
yeah, it's been very fun to see people try to interface with Dash, because outside in like the crypto world, there seemed like, first off, there's a crypto business world, and there have been quite a few projects that no matter how decentralized they are on paper, they behave like a company.
sure.
And then there's like the open source madness of like whatever, which has its own structure, its own unspoken sort of structure where it's developer centric, and it's like the developers and who has the most commits, and the few people that call the shots and run the GitHub repository are that's the council of elders that really decides everything that happens. And it's funny to see when you go to Dash, it's just like who do we talk to? It's like, well, everyone. Like, not everyone, but everyone kind of. It's like, whoa, how's that work? And it's very funny to see like people not knowing. And there have been a few different people who wanted to put proposals before the network, and I had to tell them how to do it. It's not just how to write a proposal, but it's like, look, they're going to want to know this. They're going to want to know this scope. They're going to want to know that. And this is how you interface with the network. These are the discussion forums you want to tailor things to, and you want to be available to talk this and that. And then that's how it works out. And that kind of expertise, I mean, if Dash in particular, but also DAOs that are modeled after it, become a thing of the future, a big popular thing, which I think they're going to be the way humanity as a whole organizes within the next 20, 30 years. I think it's going to be these kinds of jobs, these kind of skill sets are going to become very important.
So I want people to understand what happens behind the scenes within Dashwatch.
How is the sausage made?
Because there'll be a lot of people that think, yeah, Dashwatch, end of the month, reports, so what? But there's a much bigger picture here. And I want you to try and help people understand what really goes into making those reports. Can you just talk about some of the challenges and difficulties that you faced, difficulties that you've overcome, and challenges that you have to endure that you think that the community might not be aware of when you're trying to get as much information to put a solid report together?
Yeah, let's break that down.
Yeah.
First, what was like one of the most frustrating things you've experienced in this whole, biggest frustrations in this whole process over the years?
Sure. So like personally, my biggest frustration is when I see proposals personally, and I feel like, wow, this is not going to work, or I see proposals that this is clearly not working, they're clearly not delivering, proposals have completely just disappeared, right? And I want personally to scream, hey guys, like MNOs, you got to stop this. Obviously that's not an objective view that Dashwatch can take, right? So again, it's just maintaining that objectivity and that neutrality to be fair to everyone, right? We just report the facts. And if, because some people, they see it, they see a report and they say, this is fine, this is what I paid for. And other MNOs say, no, this is not fine, right? So who are we to decide that, right?
Of course.
So personally, my biggest frustration is, the proposals I've seen, I feel like, wow, this is not going to work out. This is not a good investment of our treasury. But, working with Dashwatch, you can't go out and say that, right? You have to be neutral about it.
Yeah. So what about the greatest obstacle?
Yep. So one of the challenges we have is, working with proposal owners, obviously they want to reflect their proposal in the best light possible, right? And for us, we have to maintain a balance between the proposal owners and the MNOs, because on one hand, if we don't work with the proposal owners, they don't want to work with us. And that just makes the job a lot harder. They don't want to work with us. They don't want to communicate with us. On the other hand, if we make it so it's completely biased to proposal owners, MNOs are going to be like, hey, this is not a fair report. This is clearly just highlighting their good points, none of their bad points, right? So maintain that balance is tricky, because with some of these proposal owners, we have to push back and say, hey, is that valid? Is that milestone verified? Can you verify it? And sometimes these are things that proposal owners have never had to thought about before. They never encountered that before, right? From our point of view, is we have to back up everything we say, right? Otherwise, we can't say this is verified or true if we can't verify it, right? So that can be a struggle sometimes month to month, because we have to maintain that balance. We have to push back proposal owners, but at the same time, we want them to see us as a resource, not as someone that's going to just, screw them over, right?
Do you ever have like disagreements within the team when you're doing reports? Because you said obviously you want to be objective, but
Sure.
Clearly when you're putting, because like obviously I work with Joel, and sometimes in the past we've done reports. I'm like, what are you, nuts? Like, we'll heavily debate something before something's been published. But surely there must have been times within your own team there was like different feelings. We're like, I'm not sure we should be doing that, or why don't we? I think this is the path we should be taking. Like, Can you talk to some of that? Because surely you must butt heads at times.
Yeah. So I think a lot of the reports we write, like the messaging is really important, right? How you phrase things can mean a lot of different ways. It could go a lot of different ways, right? So, end the month before we publish anything, we normally have 3 or 4 eyes on each report to make sure, hey, do we all agree on this messaging, right? So we definitely have had some discussions and debates about, hey, do we think this is a fair way of saying this? Because if we say it like this, it could mean something completely different than if we say it like this, right? So one thing that that we try to do is we say, the proposal owner has indicated XYZ, rather than saying XYZ, because we don't want people to think Dashwatch has verified certain things that we haven't, right? At the same time, though, we want the report to be kind of neutral and fact-based, right? So when we have disagreements and the debates about that, it's really normally sometimes on the wording and what we want to include and not include, because we want to have a report that's fair to everybody, right?
So what do you think has been the easiest, most like the best proposal to work with, as far as like they're responsive, they don't give you problems, they give you you don't have to fish for the actual information after, like, hey, can you tell me this? And they give you something that's like, yeah, but that's not what I asked for, dude. Like just like the most just snap, on time, collaborates, gives you very like relevant information. You don't have to ask twice for all that kind of stuff. What's like one of the easiest to work with in that way?
So I would say, honestly, most proposals that are multi-month get there eventually. So first month, there's some hiccups and they don't understand the process. But as we go through the process a few times, they start to expect, oh, this is what's going to happen. This is what they're going to want. And they're going to anticipate it, right? So a lot of times, the first month, they don't have enough proof. Like, we won't accept this as validation. We won't accept this as verification. And next month, they'll have it ready for us, right? So I would say a lot of the multi-months proposals that we have now in the system, we've gotten to a point where there's a system that we have in place and they know what we want and we know what to ask from them, and we can go back and forth very easily, right? Generally, we don't like to say, hey, this is the best proposal, because we don't really endorse proposals like that. It's
not the
it's a
best,
fine line
but
for
like
a while.
easiest to work with. Now,
Yeah, so
outside of multi-month, then, how about outside of multi-month? Like just the one-shot ones where like the first time you went to them, they were just easy to work with right away. Or just one that comes to mind.
Yeah, top of my head, like I really can't think of any top of my head where the first month they've able to get everything we wanted right off the bat.
I just feel like I'm going to get a message from Paragon any second, just to say, please, can you put out a disclaimer that these are the views of Alex, representative of Dashwatch team as an entity.
I mean, and that's the thing, is when you go to like proposal endorsement and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's nothing to do with that, and it's nothing to do with like which had the most metrics. It's like maybe a proposal was fantastic at working with, and then the metrics they delivered were garbage. It's like, what the hell are you guys doing? You suck. But you actually, but sometimes they can be easy to work with, or other way around. Now, what kind of information do you think has been hardest to get out of people, as far as like?
Yep. I think the hardest type of information we've been trying to get is consistent KPIs. And what I mean by that is things are consistently measured. So let's say your proposal wants to do 3 meetups a month for 3 months, right? We need as much data as you can from those 3 meetups. Who came? How many wallets? What wallets were they? Who were they? Did you get emails? All this consistently, the same information every single month, right? I think that's been the toughest, because a lot of people don't have, or potentially don't have a background in data and data collection, right? And we don't expect them to have that background, right?
And you have a background in that?
Yeah, I'm a major. I'm a major in statistics.
There you go. So clearly, to that previous question a little while ago about like what job descriptions are good, obviously being familiar with crypto and the DAO is great, but statistics, right? That seems good. You actually have like a background in what to look for.
Yeah, absolutely. It's more about just the data and the data analysis, because we have so many different types of proposals out there, and we just have a lot of data out there, right? And for us to kind of parse through that and get to an end result, that's what we really are aiming to do, right?
Yeah. Now, on the subject of data, from just the proposed perspective, it's like what data is meaningful, what isn't.
Yeah.
That is not necessarily as important as can we just get data? Because once it's there, it's like what data do you want to measure? It's like, well,
Yeah.
we would like to give us an objective measure, and we could
Yep.
report it every single month, and they can just
Yep.
see if it's trending up or down. And if it's trending down, for example, it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It just means
Yep.
that that's a data point to talk to now. It's like, why?
Yeah.
Well, this happened. We've been focusing on quality over quantity. And
Yeah.
so despite this going down, but at least you have like that thing. And if you have it go down, you should be able to talk up why that's a good thing. And so I've noticed this as well with like crypto, and because I love that stats are so readily available with such a new industry as crypto, because it's all on the blockchain. It's all out
Yeah.
there. You can look at stuff. And one thing that I have noticed from like journalistic reporting that always cracks me up is people get so mad at numbers. They like yell at me for like reporting objective things that cannot be fabricated. And it's like, I didn't necessarily draw conclusions either. Sometimes I just said this, like, all right, let's just look at like, market price, whatever. I don't like to report on that usually, but like, let's say transaction counts. These are transaction counts. This is what it's been over time. All right, that is what it is. Transaction counts, you put active addresses, and then you compare transaction fees, median transaction values, and all that kind of stuff. You just like show stuff, and then people go like, yeah, well, that's just because you're a Dash shill. It's like, no, it's data. Like and they're like, well, I don't like the message that's sending. I'm like, I didn't send a message to it. I didn't even attach a message. I just said, these are some indicators that, and the only editorial license is deciding it's newsworthy to report on some of those statistics. And it's like, I don't get a lot of those. Like, I don't think it's meaningful to report on that. I do get a lot of, I don't like what you're saying. I don't agree with it. Well, it's data. You can't disagree with data. You didn't disagree that it's newsworthy to report on that. You just like, oh, I don't like how it looks. And so I think that moving towards a more objective thing. So for example, if you say compare Dash transactions versus Bitcoin SV transactions, it's like, well, Bitcoin SV is like way higher these days. All right. Does that mean Dash is getting smoked? Well, most of BSV transactions are traced to logging this like weather app. And I mean, is that a value? Now you have to have an actual discussion of what is a like how important is a transaction or other things. Then you say, well, there was like 1,100 or so transactions to buy stuff on the Dash retail systems in like Latin America over the last month. That's like a hard purchase thingy. But then you say, well, Bitcoin has moved so much more value than Dash over the last 24 hours. That's significant. Okay, maybe. But then you have to have an actual discussion as to the meaning of data. But it has to start based on raw data. I think you'd probably agree with that, right?
Yeah. And then I guess to add to that too, like a lot of proposals too, there is a data and objective element, but there's also like a human element. So this kind of ties in. I see someone in the comments ask, how helpful is the video to proposal? And do you think it's a very helpful aspect or not necessarily? Right. So I think my answer to that is the video really helps put a face to a name. Right. And I think for most people, when you see a face, that kind of builds more trust. That's a person there. That someone is really behind the project. Their identity, right? They're willing to put their identity out there. And also with the video, you can kind of get a sense of their personality, right? And generally, you want to work with people that you like their personality, right? So there's definitely an aspect in the proposal system of that whole personal, like that personal relationship. And honestly, a lot of businesses are built on relationships, right?
Do you think you coming on the Dash News podcast is going to help you with the network then? Because people are seeing you for the first time,
Sure,
potentially.
Yeah.
So do you think that's a good solid aspect?
Yeah, for sure.
Yourself?
I mean,
Yeah.
I want people to understand that, like, generally when people think crypto, they think decentralized, they think of anonymous, they think of, stuff like that. And I don't think that's necessarily the case, right? Like, our faces are out there. We want our faces to be known. We want people to know, like, we're real people, and if you have issues, you have questions, you have concerns, you can come to us at any time, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely an element of those videos help because they put a real person to a proposal.
Yeah, I would like to put forward that videos and voice and face and all that is objective data. Now, conclusions, not necessary, but it's like, here's the guy talking. This is what he looks like.
Yeah.
This is what it's like. It's like, make your own conclusions based on that, but it is still an objective thing to log. It's like proof of humanity. You just show it. Now it's like, now you see this like real person here. It's like, well, what does that tell us? I don't know, make up your own mind, but at least it's out there.
Yeah, so, I mean, for example, there was a proposal a while back where the proposal owner was using a picture as proof of someone else. None of you guys remember that or not?
Oh, is that the Photoshop thing?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That was fantastic. For the viewers at home, there was some person
creativity
who was trying to prove that they picked like a stock image for their like picture, and then they were asked to like verify, like hold up a little sign that says like verifying for Dash Watch or whatever. So it was this like whoever this like actual person was doing that, and then they just had this horrific Photoshop of like that stock image they put over there. It was so awful. And it's like, it's not like Dash Watch concludes that this is a falsify. Like, no, it just, you put it there and you look at it and it's just like, oh God. All right. Obvious, we know what it is. That was good. I'll never forget that as much as it's kind of like a negative thing. It was almost like you had to try to make it look bad. It was like a giraffe neck too. It was like kind of like,
but the network the network has been battle tested. I feel it's got a lot harder, and I think the Mastodon network themselves are asking much more difficult questions, and I think they've got a lot more responsible along the way. What do you think, Alex? Because like we said, this is a journey. We're doing something new that hasn't been done before, and of course, you're going to get the occasional bad actor to come in. But I think we've been battle tested now. We've been able to really, people just trying to hoodwink us and trying to pull a fast one. We've had exposure to that, so we can actually get through to them. And I'm guessing your techniques and your methodology, looking in some of these reports, you've learned from this as well. So you don't have to take the long path anymore. You can like skip to the end and like cut straight to the chase.
Yeah, I think part of that is due to kind of the treasury shrinking and the whole crypto market just really shrinking. Like it forced us to really kind of, take a step and reevaluate proposals before we just give them money away blindly. When we were at $1,000 Dash, you just, here you go. Everyone gets a little, we have so much money, just give it all away. If we kept that up, we'd be wasting so much money. So at least now the silver lining of the whole, constriction on the market has been, we have been more selective. We try to be a little more selective, right?
Well, I mean, to add a fitness metaphor, there's bulk and cut cycles, right?
Sure.
You eat a lot, you grow muscle, you get all big and huge and sloppy and fat, and then you just kind of like contract, get the fat down, and hopefully keep the muscle gains, and then you just like blow up again. You do that kind of cycle, and so we definitely had a giant bulking cycle, especially around the 10 million a month treasury we had like in December of 2017. It's just giant, and then just there's a severe cut. There was like a lot of like little tubs of like chicken and rice and broccoli, and just a lot of misery, and just like, oh no, and we're still kind of at that stage. And hopefully we got another bulk coming soon, so we can do some more sloppy spending as we grow, right? Before we realize we tighten that up too.
Yep.
So if I was an alien and I was listening to this podcast,
how do you know you're not?
And learning about just a good half and learning about Dash for the very first time, I'd be like, okay, interesting podcast. So Dash has a treasury system that people apply for to get funding as a grant to do work. And there's this Dash Watch, which is an independent body that also applies for funding from the network. So who watches the Watchmen? Who keeps Dash Watch accountable? I mean, that's the question. If I was learning about Dash for the first time, which I think people might be asking. So could you just address that question? Who watches the Watchmen?
Yep. I think we've had that question asked before. So there's a couple of different kind of dimensions to this, right? So the first one is there's always checks and balances within Dashwatch, right? So, that's one of the benefits of having a team, is that you have that checks and balances. If one person is being biased, one person is hiding something, there's other people that have access to the same data that can verify it, right? And then the proposal information, right? That something like that, any master can go back to the proposal owner and say, hey, Dashwatch said this, can you verify this, right? Proposal owner can say, yes, I did do that, or no, I didn't. Their Dashwatch is lying, right? In addition, a lot of the data that we get, like for example, some of the Dash.org data that we're getting from DCG, like you can always go back and validate with them, right? Say, hey, Dashwatch posted this, can you go validate that, right? So there's always the checks and balances. So there is really no information that we are kind of collecting ourselves and keeping ourselves, not sharing with anyone, right? Everything we have is from someone else. The only thing we would do is we would, turn it into useful data, turn it into graphs and stuff. But you can always go back, get that data, and then validate that with someone else, right? So we're not making anything up, and you can always find someone, hey, this is original source, can you validate, yes or no? And another piece of that too is like, if you ask the question of who watches a watchman, you go deeper of who watches those watchmen, you know what I mean? It goes on and on and on. At some point, you have to have some level of, okay, you have someone watching a watchman and then watchmen watch them, right? So there's a back and forth. So I think that's kind of where the answer is right now is, who watches us? It's really the community, the proposal owners, and the people that work with that get the data, right? So we're watching them and they're also watching us, right? So that's kind of truly where it should be, right?
Yeah, it is an interesting dynamic because the master network votes for everyone. Generally speaking, they like something like Dashwatch because it's a tool that helps them make more critical decisions. Now, if Dashwatch is too critical, proposals will all hate you. And then by doing that, then they'll put the feet to the fire, be like, wow, I don't think these people are blah, blah, blah. And then that puts pressure. Yeah. And then if you're not critical enough, then the master is like, what the hell are you paying you guys for anyway?
Exactly.
And then so it kind of like both sides pushing just kind of keeps you in that balance, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I kind of mentioned earlier about one of the trickiest part is keeping that balance, working with proposal owners, but also making sure that we're getting true information, right? So that's one of the definitely hardest parts is keeping that balance and staying in the middle so that we're fair to everybody, right? At the end of the day, there's no way you can make everyone happy, right? So that's one thing that's personally when I take it to heart when people aren't happy about something or aren't satisfied, like I take that to heart personally, but I know that you can't make everybody happy, right?
Interesting. So is your biggest nightmare the Dash price actually going up? Because if the Dash price goes up, it means the treasury has more funds to disperse because of the dollar rating connected to the Dash, which means we get new blood coming into the treasury, new proposal owners, new to the network that you've got no history with.
Oh yeah.
And you're going to have to do extra digging to find out all that information. Is that like your worst nightmare?
So as the context to this is the allegory, it's like every business loves customers. And then there's Black Friday when you just have like a flood of mongrels and you're just like, oh God, you're dreading the day of that much success. Is it kind of the same with you?
Yeah. So obviously as a Dash investor, I would love for the price to go up, right? From that point of view, I have no problem with it, right? What I would fear though is the price goes up significantly. I think the community thinks, oh, we have all this money, we should spend it, right? There is a part of the community that says we should burn the Dash, right? But there's also another part that says we should be spending the Dash, and we start giving away Dash again, just left and right. And a lot of times with these proposals, it can take 3, 4, 5, 6 months before proposal owners say, hey, master owners say, hey, what's going on with this proposal, right? They could quote unquote get away with it for a while without delivering results, right? So my fear there is, we have all these proposals that come in, and Dashwatch reports on all of them, but it's too much for MNOs to digest, especially in that short of a time frame, right? Because really, if you want to be investing successfully and knowledgeably, it takes a good few days to kind of work through all the reports, work through all the data, and make those decisions. And I think that's kind of impacted the voter participation to a degree.
Do you worry that because of the 2018 cryptocurrency bear market that impacted all cryptocurrencies, do you think that the Masternode network became too battle hardened, that it may actually scare off new potential talent, attracting them to the network because they're so demanding that if someone new to the network seeking funding, you know, the network's just unleashed on them? Because when that proposal's up for voting to receive funding, the community can comment, ask questions. Are you worried that they may scare off potential talent from applying for funding from the network?
Yeah. I think this is, I guess, more of a personal opinion, but it can be difficult when you're working with a month-to-month type of proposal system where, you know, if you're a company or you're a professional and you're relying on the treasury to fund you every single month, I mean, that's a scary concept because at any 1 month they could defund you, right? In addition, there's probably a lot of people out there who have the knowledge and they have the resources and they have the capabilities, but they don't have any experience interacting with the DAO or with a DAO, and they don't know how to interact with them, and they don't know what's the best way to communicate with them, and that can be a challenge and that can be a struggle, right?
Yeah, how does one communicate with a DAO? What do you think?
That's a good question. I think the biggest thing, I think what we've seen in the past is the biggest thing is you have to be professional, right? If you lose your cool, you just get ripped to shreds. You know what I mean? Because I mean, part of it is the masterminds want to see how do you respond, you know, when you're challenged, when you're criticized, you know, when you have feedback, do you respond positively and, you know, pivot and say, hey, I can do XYZ, or do you just kind of shut down, right? Because honestly, the M&O is a huge different ride. Did I lose you?
Yeah, we lost you for a split second.
A slight hiccup.
But it was only for a second.
You should stop day drinking.
Okay. That's what it is.
Yeah, so the professionalism, yeah, it is important to conduct yourself, because if you receive funding from the network, you are therefore an ambassador of the network. Essentially, you're a contractor to the network, and you know, the community, and more importantly, the Masternode network, close to 5,000 masternodes, are essentially your employers. That doesn't give everyone the right to shout at you and mistreat you and be rude. However, if they have feedback, because it's in their best interest to see you succeed, how you choose to respond to that criticism really shows your commitment to the network, to your employers, right?
Yep, absolutely. And it's tricky because there can be very talented people that maybe not be the best communicators, right? There's maybe someone who's more technical and not the best communicator. They may have trouble getting a proposal through because they cannot, or they have troubles with kind of communicating their value, right, and their skills. So that could be a barrier, because part of getting a proposal through the treasury is honestly being able to articulate what your value is to the M&Os, right? If you can't do that, then you won't get funded, right?
Yeah, and we're scaling as a network as well. Like, years ago, I always used to be able to feel like I could gauge the sentiment of the Masternode network, how they would vote on certain things. But I've noticed as we've grown and more people have joined the community, there's much more of a, I would say, tug of war. But I've kind of noticed certain trends, like phases in the treasury funding cycle. Like, for example, one stage we had loads of meetup proposals go up, and then it kind of shifted to merchant adoption. And I guess it depends where people are around the world. They have different points of view and opinions. Like, some people say, oh, we should be building out the ecosystem, and then other people say, no, we need ground teams onboarding businesses, everything else. And it's like we go through phases of like fatigue and get bored, and we switch things around. But it's hard, isn't it? Because people are dependent as contractors to do this work, but people just pick and choose and drop, and it's tactical voting. I mean, it's just, I don't think there's any way of avoiding it, is there? It is what it is.
Yeah, and that's the nature of the beast. I feel like, on one hand, if you could, the benefit of that is you could drop someone who you feel like is not bringing their, cutting their weight. You can drop them like that. On the other hand, though, you can also drop people who are doing very good work and they just get dropped. So there's pros and cons to that. And I can understand why someone who is running a business or whose livelihood depends on this, that they would be hesitant, to be scared, because every single month their livelihood's on the line, you know?
Oh, don't I know it? I mean, so I should, offer my personal experience. First off, as I'm fond of repeating to everyone who will hear it, especially media appearances, etc., I don't have a bank account. I live entirely off of Dash. So first off, if Dash is screwed, I'm screwed. And second, I work for the Dash Decentralized Autonomous Organization. And like when I start, I mean, there's a lot of people who were investors and got into Dash, and then they decide to start helping on a volunteer basis because they like their investment, and then they decide to have like a full-time job with it. And like when I started, like a couple months before, I do remember a couple months before I started working for Dash, I had to borrow money to make rent. So I was like broke, and because the whole deciding I'm not going to receive any fiat currency starting late 2015. I'm only going to get paid in crypto. It's a little radical for the time, right? And so obviously that comes with risks, and I took risks in order to live this glorious, crazy dream. And obviously for me, like the whole it's kind of like this is all I got. I'd have to figure out a way to pivot like quickly and hard if something didn't work out. And I don't say there's plenty of people who are much less, who have more expenses than I do, like family, wife, kids, business, like all those kinds of things, mortgage, loans. Like a lot of people have stuff like that they say, well, I'm a high quality professional, and I really think that this Dash thing is cool, and I really think that they can benefit from my skills, and I want to go, I want to go do something about it. And what's funny? Someone who I actually very much disagree with on just about everything else, and the community doesn't seem to like it very much, remain completely unnamed. And there's a few options to pick from. It's not like exactly who I'm talking about. Said something recently about like, look, you guys can't expect us to do anything for free. Things cost money. It's like nonsense to just think, oh yeah, just develop it for free, make it all for free. And you have teams to pay, people with like families to feed, all that kind of stuff. And also that you can't expect a legit business to take part, to have a relationship with an entity, with employers or contractors who constantly like harangue and insult and like fund one month but then not the next one, just not just like decide to cleanly sever the contract, but like decide like, yeah, this month, yeah, sorry, but can you keep working for us still even though you didn't get paid? It's like you can't really expect a lot of serious businesses to do that, and that's absolutely right from a person I disagree with on everything else.
So what's it like working for Dash, Alex? Like, because we've just been talking about essentially job security within the network and being a contractor, and there are risks involved, and perhaps people don't really take this on board sometimes, but actually getting paid in Dash can be volatile itself. Like, what's your experience been today? Are you happy with that, or have we lost connection? Oh no, you're there. Did you hear me? Okay, we got you back. You can see me. Did you hear the question?
I hear you. Yep.
Yeah. So, what's it like working for Dash and earning Dash as a living? What's it like earning Dash for a living? Is it? Do you have problems? Is it?
Oh, you cut off again. Was that it?
All right. Okay. No. What's it like working for the network and earning Dash? Is it volatile?
Yep. So, obviously we didn't get funded this month, right? So we're at a point where, so Matt and our team is, pretty much completely reliant on the treasury funding for kind of everyday expenses, right? The other members of the team, me included, we all have other, positions that we can earn a living on, right? So we have that backup, and we've always had that backup because, when we were really constrained in, I think it was like probably January, February of this year, most of us that could afford it kind of took a step back and basically worked without pay from the treasury and still kept the same amount of work, just so we could, get through the time, right? So I think we've all tried to make sacrifices to make the proposal work. So for me, I have some stability there, which is nice because we can try to keep our services going and that's what we're trying to do this month. Keep our services going for a minimal price, right? And to have that flexibility where a month without funding or a month with limited funding wouldn't completely destroy us and wouldn't completely demolish us, right? So I think that's kind of important and unique about our proposal is that we are trying to keep it afloat the best we can, right? Because we do think it's a very important piece of the network and very valuable piece of the network. But I think that question would be kind of better suited for someone on our team like Matt, where his complete livelihood kind of depends on the funding. And a lot of the kind of donations we're trying to get this month is to keep him in that stable position where he's able to keep working, right? But it is what it is, and the M&Os decide where the money goes, and if they don't feel like the value is there, the value isn't there, right? Obviously, we're trying to work our best to increase the value, all at the same time, increasing the efficiency of where the funding is spent.
So let's talk about multi-month proposals, because this is a bit of a hot potato topic right now. How many months is too long? And just to give a bit of background information, if you submit a proposal to the network, you can do it for a multi-month, but it'll always be for the same amount of Dash once it's approved. And of course, with the price being volatile, it can go up and down, and then that monthly payout will always be the same amount of Dash. So that can present problems. It can be a gift and a curse. Yeah. So in your opinion, Alex, how many months is too much for a multi-month proposal? 6, 12? What's the pros and cons? What's the right number? What's the magical number?
Sure. So I think what we see is that generally multi-month proposals have lower engagements in terms of voting. What I mean by that is people are less likely to flip their vote. So once they vote yes, they're going to keep it a yes, right? It normally takes a lot for them to kind of flip that vote, right? They're only really voting on new proposals because it takes less time, less to evaluate, right? So the pro to that is you're more likely to stay funded if you're a multi-month because that people that have voted you in, they're going to generally keep it a yes, right? The con to that is, like you said, to the proposal owner, the con to that is that price could go down and you're getting the same amount of Dash, right? So to the M&Os, the pro of a multi-month is you vote once, you kind of know less votes in the future, right? Less work in the future next month. The con is, though, you have a proposal that isn't performing, it can take a little longer to catch that, and to quote unquote save that funding and redirect it somewhere else, right? It could take the 3, 4, 5 months in order to kind of catch that, right? I think honestly, 3 is a good number. You're at a quarterly, Dash core group, they do a quarterly call, so I think 3 is kind of a good number where you're gonna say, hey, let's completely reevaluate what you've been doing the past 3 months. But I still feel like in the day, M&Os should try their best to kind of evaluate every single month on a month-by-month basis. Because for Dash Watch, if even they're quarterly, we still do a monthly report, right? So really, you should be evaluating every quarter, but I can understand why some don't.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And it's great as well that the network has that ability to defund multi-month proposals as well. It's not all said and done, right? And we are seeing a lot more strategic voting as well and how things play out. We are living in interesting times. Let's flip the script. Okay, I'm coming to the network. This sounds amazing, Alex. I can come and I can work for the network and put up a proposal and get funded to work for Dash. Amazing. But I know that you're going to be trying to hold me accountable. So if you could wave a magic wand and have the ultimate proposal for me coming to submit, what would you want to see in that proposal description in terms of deliverables, metrics? What advice would you give me writing my proposal?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple sections, right? So we go through the milestones, objective section. So maybe the first section we go through is the context and background, right? The best way you can frame that up is, what is a current problem or a current need the community needs, right? And address that need. Like, what's your support for that? Let's say you're saying, there's remittance from Mexico to US, right? That's a problem. Your support is I'm gonna throw our numbers out here. $12 million a day going back and forth remittance with a fee of 5%. Therefore, if we did it at 2%, this is how much people would save, right? So the first piece is the context of why you think it's important and the support behind it, right? The second piece is kind of, and this is all very high level, right? Is the kind of milestones and objectives, right? How are you going to measure your success, and how are we going to measure you building up to that success, right? So if you're building something out, what are the distinct milestones to get you there, right? You know, month one, XYZ, by day Y, day Y, XYZ, and also a backup plan. Like, let's say you don't hit this, what's the backup plan to that, right? And they should be very clear objectives of, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to deliver XYZ by this day, right? Let's say you're building out a new app or a new website. You say, I'm going to deliver this page. I'm going to deliver this MVP by this date, right? In the budget section, really, you also want to have that buffer and that fallback of, here's where all the money is spent. If I get more money, here's what's to be put towards. If I get less money, here's what to be put towards. Because realistically, every month you're not getting the same amount, right? How are you going to allocate that budgeting? And then I think the last part is really just, what's the future plans? Where do you see this taking it? And where do you see it scaling and having that long-term effect? Because ideally, we want to be funding things that over time can keep giving us dividends over and over, right? So that's very high level. I think where if you have a proposal, like those are the things you have to think about when it comes to the network. At the end of the day, it's really about having a well-prepared proposal that's really thought out, right? It's not something you thought about for a week and throw it up. You know what I mean?
Well, that's one side. So that's for people submitting proposals. Now, personally speaking, for yourself as an individual of Dash Watch, but just for your own personal opinion, what message would you give to Masternode owners voting on proposals? What would you like them to know or to look at when they look at proposals? If you could give them advice.
Yeah. So from a personal standpoint, right, you really want to be looking at, like, month over month, is there growth? Is there continual improvement, right? You don't want someone who's, or from my point of view is, you don't want a proposal that's stagnant, right? You want a proposal owner who's going to be hungry, right? Who's going to be thinking of other ways to do things better, right? He says, hey, I'm doing all these things, but how can I do it better? What are more things I can do for the same value? You want someone who's hungry, you know what I mean? They're not doing it just because they're going to get paid, right? And then another thing that, personally I've been thinking about a lot lately is to have some sort of like a delegated voting system where if you feel like as MNO, you don't have the time, you don't have the effort, or you don't have the knowledge to intelligently vote on certain proposals, you give that vote to someone who you feel like has your same values and you feel like is trustworthy enough to put that vote to good use, right? Because ideally, we have 4,000 plus MNOs. Who knows how many MNOs that counts for? But ideally, you want them all to, right? Because end of the day, as a community, we want to be sure there's a consensus. If you don't feel like you have the time, the energy, the knowledge to vote, give that vote to someone else who can vote for you and can make an impact with the treasury funding. Right?
Yeah. So regarding that delegated voting, that's some subject I'm really interested in. Obviously, it's pretty fun to see. Like, so first off, regarding how many Masternode operators there are, how many owners there are. Was it Ryan has said publicly before he estimates between 1,000 1,500. So that's that many, but you got to tack on 500 to that because that's what CrowdNode is. 23 nodes are comprised of 500 extra people, and there's like 20 something or something with Neptune Dash, although they don't vote. So first, that's on that end. Like, who knows? Like, I know quite a few people who are involved in ghetto crowd node. Rather, they all, like, 3 of them together pool their funds, 5 of them together, like friends, and they sign a contract together, and they just keep it very. So who knows how many of that is going on? And that's the things when you look at Masternode clustering statistics, you try to figure out who are whales. That only tells you 1 and above. It doesn't tell you under 1. Like, so I would say involved in the process, probably 2,000, 2,500 people. Could be somewhere in there. Of course, it's so much speculation. Now, regarding delegated voting, first off, I think that's a great idea. And I think that now you could just delegate your voting key That's fantastic, and I think you should. The next thing that's even better is CrowdNode has their vote delegation thing, where right now, if you don't enter a vote, it's not abstain. It's if you just don't enter a vote, then it kind of gets democratized among the people who do vote. And then, so that means if you just like a few people are voting, they swing all of CrowdNode's votes. But in addition, CrowdNode lets you delegate if you're not using the service, you can delegate your whole masternode key, your whole masternode voting key. So then that just adds a node to the count of like who gets to vote. So you kind of delegate to the masses, at least the masses in this one company's service. Now the next level, like that's like we're going to like the brain meme. It's like no teeny brain.
Yeah.
You vote or you don't. Like bigger brain, you get to delegate your vote to someone else. Bigger brain, shiny brain or whatever, you get to delegate to CrowdNode in the masses. And then like the super transcendent thing is you get to have a default non-voter delegation, i.e. I always want to vote, but what happens if I'm on vacation or I lose access to whatever, or if like some evil person takes out my power so I can't vote because they know that they don't like my vote? It defaults to copy Mark's votes. Or what if I'm busy one month and Mark is all into it, and so he has all his votes planned out. I vote on half the proposals I know about. The other half I don't. It just defaults to whatever Mark does. And I've told like the core team, the product team, and all that about that. They seem to like it. I've told some trust protectors and diff people and stuff. They seem to like that. I don't know how technically difficult that is to implement, but that would be just so amazing, especially if you set up like I vote, and if I don't vote, then copy what Mark does. And if Mark's not around, just kind of throw it at the CrowdNode delegation of the masses. And I think that, as always, like people say like voter turnout and stuff. Oh, voter turnout. Like I hate the idea of enforcing voter turnout. I love the idea of removing barriers to turnout. And so any way you can make this easier or make it like more rewarding for people to do this, and then they just like want to pay attention and vote. And then we have a much tighter system. So,
well, you got a nice shout out in the chat, Joel, from Peter from CrowdNode. No, he was very appreciative that you're talking about the CrowdNode's voting delegation.
Well, so thank you, Peter, for paying attention. And by the way, I'm not going to say that like. So as far as I know, this is the only Dash Weekly podcast. There might be some others that people do or have done in the past. It does make, if you are a Dash user, if you're a Masternode owner, you should probably pay attention to this podcast or Dash News content or both. Or if you have a better source, which if it's out there, I don't know, but pay attention. Just pay attention to what's going on in your world, of your world investment. And it makes me very, I've seen Jacob Ballou in the chat as well from Vega Wallet. And it makes me happy to see companies, again, not people who work for Dash, not just Dash investors, but companies that leverage Dash just actually paying attention to what's going on in their world. And it's like how many companies during the great Bitcoin scaling debates were just like, I don't know, I'm not going to deal with that. I'm just going to keep my head down and work. It's like at some point you have to participate in the future of your investment. And if you have a company built around a technology, you're going to want to pay attention to that. So cheers, Peter. Cheers, Jacob. You guys are true OGs. Thanks for watching.
Excellent. Okay, so we're now fast approaching the 1 hour mark. Alex, if people are watching this or listening and they're thinking, this Dash Watch sounds fascinating, I would love more, or I have some questions for that, Alex, where should they go? How should they contact you? What's the best method of communication?
Yep. So probably the best way is to email us. It's team@dashwatch.org. And then like I'm on Discord a decent amount, as many of you have probably seen. My username is just Dash Al, A-L. Then also, if you go to our website, it's just beta.dashwatch.org. And kind of the beta is our new site that we're working on, building out a lot of the metrics. And if you want to go, there's also the normal dashwatch.org. And that has some of the older proposals from like 2017, early 2018. And that is still valid, but most of our new work is being done on the beta support.dashwatch.org.
Excellent,
And
fantastic.
like I said,
well,
yeah, I was saying people can reach out anytime. Pros owners, mastermind owners, reach out anytime. Questions, concerns, feedback. We're very open to any sort of feedback. We're always asking for feedback. Sometimes we don't get it, so we don't know where to go without feedback.
oh
Yeah,
dear.
And I
The
should
comment section is going to be lit now.
yeah, and I should hit this with the final thing about feedback. First, us, Dash Force, feedback generally, especially on the podcast, if you could give relevant to the podcast comments, not just like, oh, I just think this other thing you do, or okay, that works too, but especially, keep it comments were relevant. But we want your feedback. Give Dash Watch feedback also in the comments, or if you think it's more appropriate to do it privately, do that. Hey, remember, there's nothing more disheartening and frustrating for a proposal owner than to lose votes or sometimes lose funding. It's just like, what did we do? We thought we were doing a good job, and just not have any, like, if someone says, you suck, I don't like your face, and your teeth are ugly, no votes, no money for you. It's like, oh, at least you get it. At least you're out of there. But if it's just like, I thought we were doing a good job, we ask you what we could do better, and it just still doesn't work out, and there's not even a great job, but we're funding someone else over you, it's nothing personal, just give us something. The more communication, the better, because this is completely blind and anonymous and all that. And in that world, you have to make an effort to be more communicative.
Well, on that note, Joel, would you like to take us out?
Yes. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. We spread the word far and wide. It can't just be the OGs watching. It's got to be lots of people. And if you're one of those audio only people who listens while working out, I know I listen to podcasts while working out. Not this one, because I already know what happens on it. But there's an audio only version, comes out every Saturday. The links go in the description of the posts we put on dashnews.org, your number one source for Dash and cryptocurrency news in the world. Challenge me on that. Come on. See if you can find a metric, because number one is not well defined. But make sure you subscribe to all that kind of stuff. And now it's time for the happy, fun after party. Just like this, except less business, more fun, more people, and it's not recorded. So if you say something completely stupid, more stupid than anything I've said today, then it's not going to be on permanent record unless someone's pulled some tricks, but they don't. So if you want to get into the after party, go to staydashy.com. Right around Q, the link pops into the live chat. Staydashy.com gets you into the Dash Talk Discord. And then you just start asking around, where's the after party? Hey, where's the after party? Hey, where's the after party? Is Alex gonna be in there? I want to give him a piece of my mind. And then he'll be like, oh gosh, I gotta shower or something, and he'll take off. No, who knows that happens. But that's how you get in the after party. We chat. A lot of the good hard work and hard brainstorming actually comes out of that, despite it being like a relaxed social setting. So go do that.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joel. And of course, if you want to comment, if you're watching this on YouTube as well, I'm sure Alex will be refreshing this video throughout the week to answer any questions that you have as well. So thank you for watching this. Please press that like button, and don't forget to share and subscribe. This was episode 115 of the Dash News podcast. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Stay positive, stay humble, but most importantly, stay dashy. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Woo-hoo.